and welcome to Dutch Greybeard. This is one of my favorite videos to make because, as mentioned in my previous reading plans video, it makes me feel like a kid in a candy store. Just imagining that a year from now I will have read so many new fantasy and other books just makes me very happy. As you can see in my TBR bookcase behind me, I've been plundering the shelves for the books I want to read this coming year. I've got them all in front of me, hopefully in the right order, so let's pray everything goes right. But before diving into all of my planned reads, let's look back on how much of my plans for 2024 actually came true. My projection was that I could and would read these 50 fantasy novels. Setting my goals for 60 books in total, that would mean that I would read about 10 books outside of the fantasy genre. There are less than 2 weeks remaining in 2024, but I can make an estimated guess of the numbers at the end of this year. I expect that I will have read 61 books by then. 40 of those belong to the genre of fantasy and 21 do not. So I read more outside of fantasy this year than I had anticipated. And I read 10 less fantasy books than I had hoped I would. Of the 50 planned books, I have read these 22. At the moment, I'm over the halfway point in the Empire trilogy by Jenny Wirtz and Raymond E. Feist, which I hope to finish reading this year. George MacDonald, whose omnibus is in this picture, I DNF'd, so I cannot count that one. But aside from my plans, I read these 19 other fantasy novels. In addition to that, I read these 21 non-fantasy books. I'm currently still reading 2 of them, but I expect to have finished those by the end of this year. So, instead of 50, I read 40 fantasy books, and the accuracy score of my planning is 42%. I will set my total goal for 2025 at 60 books again. And in an attempt to make a plan that might actually be followed through to some degree, I will pick only 40 fantasy books. That being said, I instantly need to make my usual disclaimer here. My reading plans are never set in stone. So me deviating from this is a given. And now for the fun part, pretending that I will read all of these books I have stacked over here. Let's dive into my overly crowded TBR bookcases. Before picking my selection for fantasy, let's briefly glance at my plans for books in other genres. For 2024, I had no idea I was going to read 21 other books. But I have a feeling I just may do that again in the coming year. Even though fantasy is my main genre, I still like to read some non-fiction and the occasional literary novel. However, I couldn't pick 20 titles. I can think of 5 at the most right now. They are Haruki Murakami's latest novel, The City and Its Uncertain Walls. In May next year, when the paperback edition of the Dutch translation becomes available, I will be reading that one. Then I will probably read Communion with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Don't know if this shows. The lighting is very bad as usual. I'm very much looking forward to this. I think I'll be reading one Neil Donald Walsh a year at least. They're always very inspiring books. Recently I read the autobiography by Oliver Sacks, and that has rekindled my interest in this writer. So I think I will be reading 2 of his books. I have about 4 on my shelves at the moment. Those 2 are A Leg to Stand On and The Island of the Colorblind. Really looking forward to these. Maybe I'll even read more Oliver Sacks, I'm not sure. Then I also want to continue my study of Edgar Cayce. I have several unread books by him or about him, and I think I will pick up this one, Edgar Cayce's Story of Jesus. Edgar Cayce was a strongly religious man, and I'm very curious what comes forward about Jesus in his readings. Other than these 5, I really have no idea what will come my way outside of fantasy in 2025. Perhaps I will read some more science fiction or finally read some thrillers again. I still have many on my TBR shelves behind me. And now, let's pick my fantasy books for the next year. Last year I estimated that I would read one Discworld novel. Instead, I read 7 of them. Even though not all the books in this huge series are a success for me, I really want to continue reading them. Maybe 7 books is a bit too ambitious, but let's say I will read 4 of them. They are excellent palate cleansers in between series or huge chunkers. I will continue in the publication order. I just finished Mort, the 4th in the series, and the next one is Sorcery, which I want to read, and the one after that is Weird Sisters, which I'm looking forward to very much. Looks very nice. Then some time ago I started reading the Tiffany Aching sequence, and I really would like to finish that. I've still got 2 left, which are I Shall Wear Midnight and The Shepherd's Crown. This one, The Shepherd's Crown, also is the closing volume of the entire series. I was surprised at myself for not reading more of Robin Hobb this year. 2 of her trilogies were part of my plan for 2024. So, Live Ship Traders and Tawny Man will transfer to my plans for 2025. Live Ship Traders starts off with Ship of Magic, number 1 in the series, Mad Ship, and the closing volume, Ship of Destiny. These are pretty big books, I believe. Yeah, about 800 pages, so they're chunkers. Then next I want to read the Tawny Man trilogy, which starts off with Fool's Errand. Number 2 is Golden Fool. And number 3 is Fool's Fate. I believe this one's even bigger. Yeah, so 900 pages. All right. At the very least, I really want to read the first trilogy, The Live Ship Traders, and I can only hope that I will also read the Tawny Man trilogy. We'll see how it goes. Not a year can go by without me reading anything by Guy Gavriel Kay. Apart from his Fiona Farr tapestry, I had hoped to have read A Song for Arbonne this year and The Lions of Al-Rassan. That turned out a bit too ambitious, so these will also transfer to 2025. Some other books that I want to transfer to my current plans from my old plans are The Dreaming Tree by C.J. Cherryh. This has been on my list for so long. I picked it up many times already, wanting to start to read, and every time I put it back. Don't know why. It could be that it's going to be a disappointment, and perhaps that's why I put it back every time, but as always, we'll see. But it's definitely on my list for 2025. Also transferring is the Greatcoats series by Sebastian de Castella. On my 2024 list, I only had the first 2 books of the Greatcoats series, but I will put all 4 of them on my plans for 2025. If I like the first book, I'm quite sure I'll fly through the other 3 as well. I don't know if these are in the right order, but I'll show them to you. Trader's Blade, I believe this is the first one. I believe the second one is Tyrant's Throne. These are not small books either. What's this? This is almost 600 pages. Then number 3, I believe, is Saint's Blood. And the final volume, which is also about 600 pages, is Night's Shadow. All 4 of them. Then, transferring from 2024 to 2025 are the 3 books in the Drizzt series by R.A. Salvatore, which are Homeland, Exile, and Sojourn. Another transfer is the Scythe of an Ark trilogy by Neil Shusterman, even though Mike from Mike's Book Review was very disappointed in the final book in the series. But these are the first book, Scythe, the second book, Thunderhead, and the final book, which is hopefully going to be a pleasant surprise for me, is The Toll. Next is the Coppercat trilogy by Jen Williams, which obviously I didn't get around to this year. This is probably not in the right order, but I'll show them to you. The Copper Promise, The Iron Ghosts, The Iron Ghost, and The Silver Tide. And I most definitely want to start Memory, Sorrow and Thorn by the other Williams on this list, Tad. Like last year, I will only put the first two on here, starting with The Dragonbone Chair and then continuing with Stone of Farewell. Beautiful covers. I'm at 28 books right now, so I can pick 12 more. As for Brandon Sanderson, last year I read 6 of his books instead of the 3 I had planned. For certain, I will continue in his Stormlight archive with Dawn Shot first, which I can read before Rhythm of War if I'm not mistaken, then Rhythm of War, of course, and then I will definitely read Wind and Truth. I will probably also read some of his Cosmere stories that are collected in Arcanum Unbounded, and I am uncertain whether I will start with his Mistborn era 2 books or try some of his secret projects. For now, I will put Tress of the Emerald Sea in my plans. So that's 4 Brandon Sandersons for 2025. First and foremost, I really finally need to read Patrick Rothfuss. Even though it looks as if his Kingkiller Chronicles will never be finished, I will start with The Name of the Wind. I've heard so many good things about this book, and chances are I will want to continue right away, but let's cross that bridge when we get there. Also, I want to read more of Jenny Wirtz. After her debut novel and the Empire trilogy, I will read her first trilogy called The Cycle of Fire, starting with Stormwarden. This is the only one I will put on the list, but the other 2 I'll just show in case I might continue reading it. Keeper of the Keys, which is book number 2, and Shadowfane, which is book number 3. And next, I will most certainly read my first Joe Abercrombie. I had planned on reading it these weeks, but the Empire trilogy got in the way of that. If I listen to all I've heard about the First Law trilogy, I will probably read the 3 books back to back, but restraining myself, I will only put the first 2 on the list, starting with The Blade Itself and Before They Are Hanged. It is a crying shame that a whole year has gone by without me reading anything by Michael J. Sullivan. Given how much I love his Rhaeria revelations, I cannot wait to get into his Rhaeria Chronicles, starting with The Crown Tower. And, alright, let's put the second book on here as well, The Rose and the Thorn. So, where am I at? I've got 2 books left. There simply is too much I want to read, like the Codex Alera by Jim Butcher. Or how about George R.R. Martin? He again didn't make the cut, same as Stephen Erickson, whose Malazan Book of the Fallen I really would like to start reading. John Gwynn's Faithful and the Fallen, the Redwall books by Brian Jake, and much more. But the final 2 spots will be taken by Red Seas Under Red Sky, the second book in the Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch. I really liked The Lies of Locke Lamora, and it's high time to continue this series. My last pick for 2025 is Legend by David Gemmell. This book has been recommended to me so many times, and I believe the time has finally come to read it. So, this is what my reading plan for 2025 looks like. 40 fantasy books and 5 non-fantasy with room to spare. No doubt I will deviate from these plans because I'm a mood reader. If something unexpected comes along that grabs my attention, I will most likely jump on it. But we'll see. Maybe I'll have a higher accuracy score this coming year. Either way, I plan on having another great reading year. No matter how many books I read or how close I can stick to this plan, that is the only thing that really counts. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again at Dutch Greybeard.